I think what the U.S. is hitting its head on is that there's a contradiction between what is in its political interests versus what is in its economic interests. And what I mean by that is, for the longest time, we were fine with this notion of trading with China, getting the benefits from that trade with China, and while that was happening, China was getting stronger. I mean, it's like, okay, well, you're going to send all of these American companies into China. Fair enough. Those companies are going to make a ton of money. Fair enough. And just so happened, as they were making the money, China was also becoming a stronger political, economic, industrial power as they were making that money. And none of them had issues with it while they were reaping the benefits off of it. Somewhere along the way, the political branch was like, hey, China is becoming a much stronger country. They seem to be growing economically, industrially, and politically, and by virtue of that, militarily. We don't like that. And the rules that have allowed China in order to do that, those rules need to now change because they don't advantage us in a political sense. Okay, well, the horse is out the barn. It's too late. Like now the political branch is like, okay, now we need to raise walls. We need to pass sanctions. We need to create tariffs. We need to somehow go after countries that are working with China in this way. And it's like, yeah, but the reason you guys were working with China is because there was an economic benefit for you doing so, meaning those corporations that give you all those tax, that gives you all the money and everything else, they benefited from that. The American public benefited with cheap goods. And now you're saying, okay, now we need to change this. Okay, yeah, that's
I think
please.
I think there are many layers of this onion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, you're correct. Like U.S. were fine with China making toys, making shoes, making even iPhones for United States. They're just leveraging the Chinese cheap labor force,
Right.
to produce for America at a lower price. But in this process of globalization, the benefit is not distributed evenly. Right. When the iPhone is produced in China, China actually doesn't get too much of the iPhone profit. Most of the iPhone profit goes to Apple. Right. But Apple, the profit is not distributed to the rest of the Americans. It's distributed to the top Apple executives and the shareholders.
Right.
So, the 1%, 1% gets benefit from the globalization. And with a lot of Americans are getting left behind because the American manufacturing base is getting hollowed out. And people start noticing after a couple, like 4 decades of this. U.S. started offshoring even before China opened up. This started back in the 70s. And after 40 years of hollowing out U.S. manufacturing base, now vast majority of Americans are not elite educated from Ivy League. They didn't have all these connections, old boys network to help or have their daddy's connection to put them into investment funds, etc. So many Americans are left behind, and this is a real problem. This is a real problem, and this is where politicians also try to play the blame game. It's like, don't blame us and our Wall Street sponsors who actually
blame
put
China
yourself in this misery.
And it's like, how do you blame China for policy and policy that was made by lawmakers, and lawmakers being paid by companies to do that policy? They turn around and blame China for this. Oh, it's China's fault. How is it China's fault when it was your political leaders that made this particular policy, working with all of these corporations that were going to be advantaged by it? It's just outrageous. But that's the way they think. That's what they're trying to put the blame on. I'm curious on something else.
And
Joe Biden. Oh, go for it, please.
Yeah, sorry. On top of that, there's also Pentagon that's always had a hard boner for containing China. I mean, Pentagon was held in check for the longest time by the U.S. American business lobby, who want engagement because they want to continue to reap profit from China. And what happens in more recent years, there's kind of fracturing of the American business interests. If you look at the S&P 500, the most of the stock capitalization is going to all the big tech companies, right? We're talking about Google, Apple, Facebook, etc. Well, among these, Well, Google is not in China. Facebook is not in China. They have nothing to gain from China. On the other hand, Google, Google, Facebook, they're also very closely tied with American. They're part of the American military industrial intelligence complex.
Right.
They're basically embedded with all the intelligence services. That Google have a lot of contract from the Pentagon, etc. So they have everything to gain from blocking out their Chinese competitors, like TikTok. TikTok is eating their lunch in social media. So, one of the campaign to kill TikTok in the United States actually majorly funded by Google and Facebook.
Yes.
Because this is competition. Because China now has grown powerful enough. They're no longer just a proxy labor force for U.S. multinationals. Right. They're having their own major brands like Huawei, like TikTok, that's able to compete internationally. This is why U.S. now coming down, to very hard on Huawei. They put the chip ban. The whole chip ban on China is to kill Huawei and to kill Huawei's phone business in particular. So there's a business competition because a lot and also EVs. Previously, American companies are making a lot of money in China. Like my cousin, his first car in China was Buick. Buick was big brand in China, and GM was making more money in China than they make in United States because China is the world's largest car market right now.
Right.
But in just the last few years, China had experienced the electric transition, the EV transition. Now more than 50% of the new cars sold in China are electric vehicles. And all the American car makers, European car makers, Japanese car makers, they all got caught flat-footed. And this is why Biden is slapped and later Trump. That's why they're trying to slap on 300% tariffs on Chinese EVs, because they know they will not be able to compete. BYD is making their entry-level electric cars for $13,000 US. I mean, how can you compete with that?
Yeah, how do you compete with that, right? And I guess the answer is you can't. If it was just a straight market, you couldn't compete with it, and that's their issue. That's why the walls are now going up. That's why they're trying to break the world into multiple fronts. I don't think that's going to work, though. I mean, the reality of it is China has been able to create these relationships. China, Russia, and all of these countries that are trying to get into BRICS and trying to get into this idea of we're going to use our own local currencies. Their argument is better. And, in the old days, in the Soviet days, it is an easy argument to make that we're freedom and justice, we're love and light. The Soviet Union is a repressive government. So obviously you want to be more with the love and light government. Okay, fast forward, and you get this argument of, well, we're going to deal with each other as equals. We're going to be nations using our own currencies in regards to trade. We don't believe in sanctioning one another. And we believe in a collective world that is relatively peaceful. And then you get the other argument of we're the hegemon and all of you are vassals. And because we're the hegemon, we should have a world with a hegemon. Okay, well, that argument doesn't work. It just doesn't. That is not a satisfying argument to go to somebody and explain to them why you are better than they are and why they should want a world where one country is better and a hegemon. Like, it is a bizarre argument to make, but that is the argument that we're putting forward. And I suspect that's the reason why much of the world has lumped in on this idea of we prefer to be equals. We don't like these sanctions. We want to deal with each other in our own trade in a way that is not disadvantageous to us. No, that makes sense. That's an argument that works. And I suspect the new world is going to be based on that argument. In the recent summit, by the way. No, go for it, please.
Oh, go ahead. I think you're getting into it. I was just going to bring up the Xi Biden summit because
that's right. I wanted to go to the meeting.
Xi Jinping address. I'll let you do the intro. Sorry.
No, well, I was just going to go into it where Joe Biden and Xi Jinping meet on the sidelines, and in this conversation, Joe Biden brings up, I guess, the relationship between China and Russia, which again, the conversation is not going to go anywhere. They even bring up nukes, basically saying we need to have human beings use nukes as opposed to having some kind of automated system. Okay, again, that seemed like a gimme though, like meaning this meeting didn't seem to accomplish anything of significance. But give
I
me your
mean,
take on this
I was not even aware. I was not even aware there's a discussion of having AI to control nukes. I mean, that's
me
pretty
neither.
scary stuff. I mean, the fact that they're having this discussion is like, what? Were you actually thinking about
It was
having
out the
AI?
blue.
I mean, like, I mean, you're really thinking about like recreating Skynet, like like the Terminator world. I mean, what are you even thinking? But that's what I was thinking. Anyway.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I read that. I was like, wait a minute, where did this come from? I mean, you got the situation where right now the U.S. is allowing strikes into Russia. Russia changing its nuclear doctrine to effectively say, look, if you hit us, and depending upon how you do this, we have lowered our nuclear threshold to allow nukes to be used in a situation where our integrity is threatened. And you get a conversation on the sideline where Joe Biden is weirdly talking about automation or automated nuclear response. It's just bizarre. It's just very strange. What was accomplished at this APEC summit, by the way, if anything?
I don't know what U.S. has accomplished except to provide us with more comedic moments with Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Uh, but Xi Jinping was pretty explicit and blunt during his meeting with Biden, and this is why I'm really surprised by the blunt language, and I'm really surprised by how little this is covered in mainstream U.S. media, because this is what Xi Jinping has said. In summary, this is a readout from the Chinese official site, and it says these are the points, the four big main points. One, there must be correct strategic understanding. The Thucydides trap is not a historical destiny. A new Cold War cannot and should not be fought. Containment of China is unwise, undesirable, and will not succeed. Two, words must be trustworthy and action must be fruitful. A person cannot stand without credibility. China always follows through on its words. But if the U.S. side always say one thing and does another, it's a very detrimental to America's image and damage mutual trust. Xi Jinping is basically saying, America, you are speaking with four tongues for a long time now. And number three, treat each other as equals. In exchange between two major countries like China and United States, neither side can reshape the other according to their own wishes, nor can they suppress the other based on the so-called position of strength, let alone deprive other of legitimate development rights to maintain their own leading position. Now, Xi Jinping is talking about U.S. chip sanction to hold down China's progress. Number four, red lines and bottom lines cannot be challenged. As two major countries, China and United States, inevitably have some contradictions and differences, but they cannot harm each other's core interests, let alone engage in conflict and confrontation. The One China principle and the three China-U.S. joint communiques are the political foundation of bilateral relations and must be strictly observed. Taiwan issue, democracy and human rights, development path, development rights are China's four red lines, which cannot be challenged. And this is, by the way, these are bolted in the original Chinese readout. So these are the real important guardrails, most important guardrails and safety nets for the China-U.S. relations. Number five, there should be more dialogue and cooperation. Under current circumstances, the common interests between China and the United States have not decreased but increased, whether in areas of economy and trade, agriculture, drug control, law enforcement, public health, or facing global challenges such as climate change and artificial intelligence, as well as the international hotspot issue. China-U.S. cooperation is needed. Both sides should extend the list of cooperation, make cooperation cake bigger, and achieve win-win cooperation. Sorry, I thought 4 points, but there's actually more. 6, respond to people's expectations. The development of China-U.S. relations should always focus on well-being of both people and gathering the strength of both people. Both sides should build bridges for personnel exchange, cultural communication, and remove interference and obstacle, not artificially creating chilling effect. Again, Xi Jinping is casting shade on the U.S. for obstructing the natural people-to-people exchange between China and United States. Number 7, demonstrate great power responsibility. China and United States should always consider the future and destiny of humanity, take responsibility for world peace, and provide public goods for the world. Or I think
that's not the way we think.
That's a lot.
Carl,
yeah, that's not what we do.
Yeah, that's not what we do. That is not the way we think. We don't take responsibility for world peace. We do not do that. I mean, I can't look over American history and think for any moment that we take responsibility for any notion of world peace. I mean, for God's sake, you're talking about Iraq, you're talking about kill squads in South America, you're talking about trying to overthrow the Syrian government, the Ukrainian war. Like that is not the way we think. We look at this stuff from what is in America's best interest. And it's not even really America's best interest. What is in a certain elite group in America's best interest. That is not the way we function. And this notion of win-win relationships, again, the fundamental crux of the issue that America always has is that we don't consider other countries as equals. We don't have equals. We have enemies and we have vassals. And so Europe are vassals. They can't even fire missiles without the US assisting in the programming of those missiles in the UK. Like, put that in context, right? And so it's like, we don't have equal nations that we engage with. If a nation is equal to us, that nation is most likely an enemy to us. And then the catch becomes, okay, well, do we at least regard them as equals in the context of enemies? We did the Soviet Union. China and Russia are creating a world where the US will be forced to engage it as an equal. And I think what China's point is, look, when you talk to us, if you're not going to talk to us as equals, we're not going to have anything to talk about. Is the US getting that message? I don't know. And I guess part of the conversation with you is